Hey guys, this is Steve in Corvallis coming to you with some March Madness for you. As we get set to hit, the brackets are out and we get set to break some of those games down. Instead of getting into the whole bracket thing as far as what my bracket is and all that kind of thing, I think we've seen a lot of that today. So I think instead what I'm more inclined to do is to go ahead and run through the Pac-12 games. That's the conference I cover, and that's really where my emphasis has always been, and that's kind of where I'd like to focus on here. So without any more delays, I'm going to have my co-host Misty come in a second. My wife Misty come in with a couple picks that I believe she has. So that's going to be in just a second, but we're going to just go ahead and hit all these games, including the CIT and the CBI and the NIT, and in addition to the NCAA tournament games. There's 9 total Pac-12 teams in play. Tomorrow night, Utah goes to St. Mary's. I really think Utah's one of those teams that got snubbed in addition to SMU, but Utah, with Loveridge and Wright, they're very efficient. But I really think St. Mary's is just more inclined at home. That's a tough little venue to play with all those upperclassmen, very experienced. They started 9-0. Their free throw rate is very, very good. I really like that solid backcourt that matches up well with Utah's backcourt. That's a pick 'em game right now. I think that St. Mary's at home as a pick 'em. I've always loved Utah the way they play to the whistle, but boy, I like St. Mary's there in that game. There's a really odd game Wednesday night. Doesn't have a line yet. Radford and Oregon State right here. Oregon State in the tournament that they always seem to play in, the CBI. Not a line yet, but I'm looking at the over in that. Both these teams, when you look at their stylistics, it says defensively challenged, and that's an understatement with both of these teams. I think that the over is a good look there. It's probably going to be 155 or something like that. I'm not going to look at a point spread there, but I'm definitely going to look at what the over looks like. If it's around 154, 153, I think that thing could spin up into the 90s without too much trouble. Utah Valley at Cal. I think Cal's going to suffer from just, the very predictable dilemma that they're in as far as they just don't have a lot of motivation here. They expected to be in the tournament. They started Pac-12 season 5-0, very unheralded, yet their inexperience, their lack of depth really caught up with them late in the season, and they really, really slid down the stretch. Utah Valley is a very unknown team, yet what we do know about them is they have a terrific free throw rate. They're extremely deliberate. They could really pose a lot of problems for California if they're not very motivated. I think they could stick around and really stay under that 13 number. I see it at 13 now. I look for Utah Valley State to keep that within 10 or so. So that would be a 1-unit play with Utah Valley State plus 13. Now on to the tournament here. I'm not going to break down too much of that Radford-Oregon State game. But onto the tournament, Pittsburgh, Colorado. I really like Pitt in this spot, minus 5.5. If you can get it at that number, Patterson, and they just simply have no weaknesses. This is probably the deepest offensive team that Jamie Dixon has put on the floor. Colorado just still has not really ascended. They did very well down the stretch. They couldn't pull away from teams without Dinwiddie in there. And Scott moving into that number 1 offensive role never quite fit that well. I just think that Pitt is so much more complete of a team. They're one of their best teams that they've had. Probably their best offensive team statistically in 6 years under Dixon, and that's really saying quite a bit. Colorado's great free throw rate, but they turn the ball over so much, and Pittsburgh is number 1 in the Big East. In ACC, number 1 in the ACC in turnover rate forced. So I just think that right there is a dynamic that Colorado just will not be able to overcome, and Pitt wins by 12 or 15, something like that. That's a 2-unit play. Pitt with 5.5 points. BYU at Oregon. Here's a game where everyone is focused on how hot Oregon is, and that BYU should not have been in the tournament. Kind of an odd deal there that when a team has a motivation like that just like VCU when they made that run to the Final Four, that a lot of folks said that they didn't belong. It does a very strange thing to a team, and BYU's a very strong team even without Collinsworth. They have 3 dynamic scorers in that lineup that are just going to pose all kinds of problems. Mika, Carlino, and Haas at 23.5 points a game are still in that lineup. They're an odd team to face because they're the number 1 tempo team in the NCAA tournament. Oregon struggled mightily with them in Knight Arena. They took them overtime to beat them. I like Brigham Young in a straight-up roll here almost. I'm going to take a half-unit play with BYU on the money line, and I think if you can get BYU +6, that's going to be a 2-unit play for me. So many folks looking forward to Oregon playing Wisconsin. I think that BYU could feel slighted there, and I think that they're just a tough matchup for Oregon. Even with all of the weapons that Oregon has, BYU gets teams into that up-tempo game as they did in Knight Arena. That game got into the hundreds, and I could see that happening again. Even though this game's being played in Milwaukee in a much more controlled environment, I think BYU is a good spot here. Arizona State at Texas. I love Texas's unselfish play. They've got those 4 players that are scoring 10 to 12 points. They're extremely inexperienced. But Arizona State with that high end pick and slip and screen roll to the corner, they just get so many points out of their corners that Texas is really, really efficient at closing to the corners with all of those athletic players that they have. They're extremely young, but they have 4 players that average 12 points or more. They're just such a deep team that Arizona State is in an odd spot there. And they're actually not that hard to defend when you figure out what they're doing with that high pick and roll with Paczynski and those slip screens to the corner. Slip screens to the corner, they just do the same thing over and over and over. Teams start to figure that out after a while. And Barnes is a great tournament coach. I like Texas in that spot at just 2 points. I think that Texas will roll over Arizona State. Couple other games, New Mexico, Stanford. That's the last game I'm going to break down here because I really like New Mexico in this spot. And Stanford, for all of their strengths with Powell shooting that from the 4 spot, the stretch 4 that everyone keeps talking about is so effective versus New Mexico. It really isn't. When you watch those games that New Mexico's played, I don't think that that's such a problem for them. Their defensive numbers are great. They've got 3 solid, steady, upper-class scorers. And I think that Stanford suffers from lack of depth. They really slipped down the stretch statistically. They may have won a lot of games, but they didn't cover too much. They covered 3 of their last 10 games. They didn't look particularly strong in the Pac-12 tournament. I think that Stanford is a good fade team here. I like New Mexico -4.5. I'm not touching Arizona and Weber State or UCLA Tulsa. And with that said, I'm going to go ahead and bring in my co-host. I think she's got a couple of picks and maybe 1 or 2. We're going to see. So just come on in.
Hi. So I actually have 1 pick for you. I think Wichita State and Louisville are going to make it to the Sweet 16 and play each other. Whoever wins that matchup is going to win the national title.
The whole thing.
The whole thing.
Oh.
Yeah.
So like just a futures play. Oh, that's good. Okay.
Yeah. So it's kind of like a bonus pick for you.
Gotcha.
There you go.
Okay.
So Wichita State at 12-1 to win it all, and Louisville 10-1 to win it all. And this is why they're both bringing valuable tournament experience to the show. They're motivated to stick it to their critics, and both bring in great coaching experience to the tournament. So that's all I got for you guys.
I agree with that. Especially Louisville at a 4 seed. I just can't understand that. And Wichita State, I think, wants to quiet everybody that says they're undefeated and can't continue that. So I like it. All right.
Yeah. Good luck with your brackets.
Okay, everybody, have a good tournament and good luck with the brackets. And that's going to do it for us. So happy March.
Bye.
See you guys later.